Hello, everybody. This is the Elder again, coming to you with another video. And I'm going to say it one more time. These videos are just my opinion. I have no proof of anything. And I call myself an elder simply because I'm of the age where people start calling you an elder. I'm past middle age. That's all it has. It has nothing to do with wisdom or nothing like that. I don't know anything. But anyway, continuing my thoughts on why do people value other people in the human race? Why do some people have a tendency to look down on you, and we have a tendency to look up at other people? Well, one of them is ethnicity, which is closely related to race. What ethnic background do you have? I remember working in a company years ago. Myself and this Caucasian fellow, we were the only two in this part of the company. We were by ourselves. The company was about 100 people and mainly females. Anytime a female came back to our section and wanted us to do something or wanted us to find something for them, his first question was always, no matter what their name was, if their name ended in SKI or LEZ or RON, whatever, he would always say, "Oh, that's a funny name. What nationality is that?" And once he asked that question, the floodgates would open, and they would go into, well, my grandmother on my father's side was Irish, and my mother on my daddy's side was German, and they would go into a long list of ancestry, a long list, and they were proud of it. We even have a company now called Ancestry.com. But I don't know. I kind of look at this the same way I look at the homeland thing. I mean, homeland, they say started either Africa or Europe. Now, if you are a young man or a young woman out here earning a living, trying to make it, got a family, and going to work every day, and you find out that the human race started in Europe and not Africa, is that going to upset you to a point where I'm not going to work today because they say the human race started in Europe and not in Africa. I'm not going to make any money because, well, would it matter? Of course it wouldn't matter. Now, I don't feel quite the same way about ancestry. People look at that and they take value in that. But the bottom line is, does that really matter? Does that really matter where you came from? Well, I guess it does, but are you going to quit your job or do anything? No, in the sense, it doesn't matter. Well, you can look it up if you want to, and guess take some kind of pride in it, I suppose. But I remember this show, a talk show. This Caucasian guy was on this talk show, and he was a proud racist, very proud. He smiled when he said it. And as the show went, there was 4 or 5 people on the show, and they were trying to correct him a little bit, and he wasn't hearing nothing of it. Anyway, there's one person said, "Well, we all come from different backgrounds and stuff like that." No, he said, "I'm pure white." Blah blah. Anyway, they decided to do a DNA test, and they did a DNA test. And next time the show was on, they had the results of the DNA test. And lo and behold, it turned out that this guy was 94% white, if you want to look at it like that. But a small part of him was South Saharan African. And he kept a straight face, but you could tell he was embarrassed. But that's what the DNA test showed, that you're not pure white. You have some African in you, and it's a tiny percent, you have it. And lo and behold, they found out a few weeks later the guy committed suicide. Now, I can't talk about the dead, but isn't that kind of stupid? Isn't that moronic? But that's what ethnicity will do to some people. They hang their life on that. Well, I remember my grandmother a long time ago told me I had Irish in me. I was about 7. Well, it hasn't made any difference in my life. Not really. I mean, it hasn't gotten any money in my pocket or nothing like that. So ethnicity has got us in this rabbit hole, and people hang on to that. They'll murder you over that. If you disagree with them too harshly, they'll murder you over that. I mean, this guy committed suicide because of his ethnic background, as if that determines your decisions. It shouldn't, although I guess some people it does, but it shouldn't. It's just who came before you. I see this this video where this guy, he's my age, and he always starts his videos by saying praise to the ancestors. I can understand where he's coming from, but what's the ancestor got to do with it? They can't determine your decision now, although I guess some people try to say, well, the ancestor told me to do this or the ancestor told me to do that. That's like me saying a while ago when they say, and when the religious thing, well, Jesus said this or Muhammad said that or Lord Krishna said one thing, and people go to war over, they'll murder you over that kind of thing. So ethnicity is, people have a tendency to look up to that. Music. Now, this is a kind of silly one, but people have a tendency to look up to people who like a certain kind of music. I remember listening to this radio show. Yes, I'm old enough to remember when there were very few TVs and a lot of radios. This African American woman was singing an opera. She had just got through singing an opera, and these two Caucasian men, they were hosting the radio show. Anyway, it was a show that played classical music. Anyway, this African American woman, she got through singing part of an opera, and she got a standing ovation. And the one guy said to the other, he said, now, upon a time, black people were not allowed to perform opera on stage. And the other guy looked at him and said, wow, what were they thinking? But I think it was Leontyne Price, but I'm not sure. And there's another example, Charley Pride. Now, a lot of people don't know who Charley Pride is. I think he's deceased now, but I'm not sure. But he was a African American who sang country and western, and he got good at it. He was popular. But in his early career, he had to, when his managers took the demo by the radio station, he had to sit in the car. He couldn't come into the radio station because if the DJs had known it was an African American singing this, they wouldn't have played it. Because back then, and I guess even sometimes now, black people are that's not your music. That's our music. You can't sing that. You can't sing that. And it's the same with rap. A lot of young and middle-aged black people think that white people shouldn't do rap because that's, quote, our music. Huh. And I saw a video about a year ago where these young Chinese men were rapping in Chinese. But people have a tendency to look at music as if, it belongs to one area or another. I remember seeing a video some years ago where Hitler said that jazz was the devil's music. Jazz was the devil's music. Now, I'm not crazy about jazz myself. It seems to have no rhyme or reason to it sometimes, but he considered jazz to be the devil's music. And personally, I remember some years ago, I worked for this company and I like classical music. No big problem. I learned it in high school and I liked it. I liked it ever since. And I worked for this company where every once in a while I had to give a ride to one of the fellow employees because their ride didn't show up or whatever. So when they got in my car, I got classical music playing, but I always turned it down very, very low. I didn't want them to think I was trying to push classical music off on them. So I turned it down very low so they couldn't hardly hear it. But they could still hear it. They could still hear it. And a couple of people in the organization didn't like me because I like classical music. Or you like the white man's music, you should like R&B. Well, I did like R&B, but my musical horizon wasn't limited to R&B. I also liked folk music. I like pop. I like marches, because when I was in high school, I was in a marching band. And nowadays, I like rock. I like heavy metal. I mean, even some Indian music I like. I like electronic music. So I didn't pigeonhole myself into a point where I only like one kind of music. I feel sorry for the young black people nowadays because they have to like rap. You have to like it. You have to. If you're a young black person and you don't like rap, then there's something wrong with you. That's the way they look at it. There's something wrong with you. You can't like anything else. And I feel sorry for those young people because they are limiting their horizon as far as music is concerned. But music is another thing that people look up to you. Like I said, look at Kanye West. He rapped some song and then he felt like he was ready to be president of the United States. I mean, who knows? Maybe he might have made a good president. I don't know. you know. So music is one of those things that people have a tendency to look up to if you like a certain kind of music. But my thing is, people aren't going to change. They're going to stay the same when it comes to religion, race, land, money. I mean, it's working too good for some people. They're not going to change that. It's when it comes to religion, some of the most heinous wars in history have been fought over religious beliefs. People have murdered, beheaded, chopped up people because they didn't believe the same thing that you believe. Now, are they going to change? No, they're not going to change. Christians, they're not going to change. Muslim, are they going to change? No, they're not going to change. Uh, uh, Buddhism, or some Buddhists going to change because the world is going to hell in handbasket? No, they're not going to change. I can't think of the Indian religion right now. It skipped my mind. Hindu. Are the Hindu people going to change? No. Well, let me take that back. A few people might change. They may see the error of the whole thing. A few, but the majority of people, they're going to stay the same. They're going to continue to believe that. Okay. Well, listen, there's probably some things I have left out, but my producer said I've reached the 10-minute mark, so I'm going to close this video out, and I'm going to say, stay curious. I'm going to do one more short video because I have to cover this, and I'll see you in that next video.